Fellow Toastmasters and guests, I'm feeling pretty good today. I slept like a baby last night. Meaning I woke up every 2 hours screaming in the dark, crapping my pants. That phrase, sleeping like a baby, it's supposed to evoke an image like this. It's my daughter, Noelle. She's 5 months old now. Angelic, peaceful, calm. The reality is bedtime for babies is typically more like this. But it doesn't have to be that way. There are techniques you can use to teach your baby to sleep and stay asleep through the night. Today, I'll explain a couple of those sleep training techniques and close with a story about my own personal experience sleep training Noelle. What are the sleep training techniques? There are two main camps. On one end of the spectrum, we have cry it out. This is any method that advocates allowing your child to cry for a certain amount of time before you intervene. There are different perspectives on this, different ways to do it. The most popular version was created by Dr. Richard Ferber in the mid-'80s. What he suggests is that you put your baby down to sleep by themselves in their crib. You don't pamper them, you just put them down to sleep, it's bedtime, and then you walk away. If they start to cry, you wait, but just a few minutes, and then you go back in to check on them. When you do, you don't give them a toy or a bottle or a pacifier, you just let them know, I'm here, it's okay, you soothe them, pat them on the back, it's time to sleep, relax, and then you leave the room. If they continue to cry, you wait a little bit longer, and then go check on them again. And that's the key, is you continue letting the interval of time get longer and longer in between check-ins. And gradually, your child learns how to soothe themselves and to fall asleep on their own without your help. This is a pretty effective method. It does have its critics. There are a lot of parents who feel that this is just too stressful to have to sit by and listen to their kid cry while they do nothing. And there are also people who claim that this can be stressful for the baby. Which brings us to the other end of the spectrum, the no tears methods, and there are a lot of people who advocate this. The probably most popular one is Dr. Bill Sears. He has a style which he calls attachment parenting, and he advocates co-sleeping, sleeping in the same bed with your baby, that you nurse them to get them drowsy, to help them fall asleep. If they wake up in the middle of the night, you're right there with them to help them, pick them right up, rock them, nurse them again to help them fall asleep again. Very gentle and nurturing. There are critics of this technique who say that this creates a state of ultra-dependence, that the baby is relying on you for everything and never learns how to do anything on their own. Then in between these two extremes, there are a lot of alternatives. People who take some things from this camp, some things from this camp, combine them together. If you search Amazon for baby sleep training, you'll find 242 books written just on this topic. So how do you pick? Which one's the right one? Well, there's no real right one. The trick is you need to find a style that works for you as a parent, something that you're comfortable with, something that matches your own parenting philosophy. The key, though, no matter which one you choose, is to be consistent. It's very important up front to agree with your partner, your spouse, on which method you're going to use, and then stick with it for at least a week or two. If it doesn't work out, you can try something else, but you want to avoid bouncing around from one technique to the next every single day. That's just going to be confusing for your child. Which brings me to my own personal experience sleep training our baby. Just in this past week, we've started using the Ferber technique. And I'm pleased to share we're on day 5 today, and after just 3 days, Noelle was falling asleep consistently with very little, sometimes no crying whatsoever. It's been very successful. So how did we decide on this? How did we get there? Well, it wasn't exactly planned. When Noelle turned 4 months old in December, all of a sudden bedtime became an ordeal. Every single night we were dealing with screaming and crying for an hour, sometimes 2 hours on end. No matter what we did, everything we gave her, everything we did, she just kept crying and crying. Nothing seemed to calm her down. We knew we had to make a change. We had heard some positive things about cry-it-out techniques. The problem was Colleen is one of those parents who just can't stand to sit by and watch her daughter cry. It's torture. So we had a great opportunity just this past 3-day weekend. Colleen had a hair appointment downtown that took her out of the house for a couple of hours. It was just me alone at home with Noelle. I figured Perfect. I can try one of these cry it out techniques. I'm going to spare Colleen the torture of having to listen to Noelle cry. Mid-morning, Noelle starts getting sleepy, rubbing her eyes, so I pick her up, put her in her crib, say, okay, sweetie, it's time to go to sleep. I love you. Kissed her on the forehead, and left. Sure enough, she started to cry, but I was strong. I resisted the temptation. I wanted to ride this out and see what would happen. She cried off and on for a while. After 20 minutes, she stopped, and she was out. Compared to what we had been dealing with before, an hour and a half of screaming and crying, this was a minor miracle. I was so excited I texted Colleen right away. Said, hey, I put Noelle down for a nap, then left the room. She cried for 20 minutes, then fell asleep. Colleen replied right away. 20 minutes? Question mark. I said, yeah, isn't that awesome? She said, 20 minutes? Question mark, exclamation point. You abandoned Noelle to cry alone in her room for nearly half an hour? She's just a baby! Oops. When Colleen came home, we had a little chat. Evidently, we had talked about making a change, but we had never agreed on exactly how or when we were going to do so. She felt like I had kind of gone behind her back a little bit, but we talked it through, and that's when we came to this compromise. We would use the Ferber method and see how it would work, which is where we are today. In conclusion, there are a lot of sleep training techniques available to you. No matter which one you choose, the key is make sure that you and your spouse agree ahead of time on the method, and you stick to it. If you do this, you, your spouse, and your child can all be sleeping like a baby.